Rotary International.
Clinton Rotary, Clinton, Tennessee.
Speaker Rusty Wallace.
Rusty Wallace, 84 Rookie of the Year for NASCAR, 1989 Winston Cup champion, 55 wins, 9 at Bristol?
Yep.
55 wins, 9 at Bristol was his favorite track. He loved short track, 7 at Martinsville. But, you know, we all know Rusty as a business partner, and he has been a phenomenal business partner throughout the years. The many times we called him, he's never told us no. So he has been a good friend and a great partner, and it's my honor today to welcome Rusty Wallace to the
Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. It's great being here to talk to you. I don't know what I'm going to talk about, but we'll come up with something, right? Wow, I tell you, I've been in NASCAR now for, we were talking a little while ago at the Chevrolet store. We're over there talking, and we're talking about the Daytona 500. I said, yeah, I got to add it up. My first year racing was 1984 in Cup, so I went to 38 Daytona 500s in a row. Didn't know I did that. But I'll tell you, I've had such a good time in this car business. It's unbelievable. And people ask me all the time, how in the world did you get in the car business up in Tennessee when you live in Lake Norman in North Carolina? I said, well, I went over there and I won this race, and this man come up to me and he said, hey, I got this Pontiac store in Morristown, Tennessee, Ray Huffaker. And he said, why don't you come on by for an autograph session? I said, all right. So I showed up. Holy smokes, man, we had like 1,000 people show up. And it was really a big deal. Then the next time, he said, I want to do it again. He said, can you bring your buddy Dale Earnhardt with you? I said, man, I don't know. We'll see what happens. So, and Earnhardt, I called him up and he goes, well, you're not going to believe this. I said, what's that? Because back then, him and I were going at it, boy, back and forth. He'd win a race, I'd win a race, back and forth. He said, well, I'm getting ready to have a grand opening at my Chevrolet dealership, and I was going to call you and see if you'd come. I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll go to your place if you go to my place. And he goes, okay, I'll do it. He shows up, I show up. We had 2,000 people there. Next day, I get a phone call from Huffaker, and he goes, man, you ever thought about being in the car business? I said, well, I'm a car guy. I don't know anything about it, but yeah, I have thought about it. And so that's where it started at. We sit there a long, long time ago. I've been in the car business now with Mr. Huffaker for over 35 years. And I just got to thank him so much. He's just such a guiding light in my life. It's incredible. And I've been able to surround myself with really smart people, and all these guys are right here in the room, a lot of them. Mark, Jake, Cougar. That's a cool nickname, isn't it?
It served me well. It served me well.
Chad Campbell, he's our head of entertainment. We always keeps us laughing all the time. And Brian and Rob. It's been a good time. And but I was able to win 55 races in the NASCAR stuff, and then one of my mentors, Roger Penske, one of the biggest guys in the car business in the world, with over 390 car dealerships now. Him and I started Team Penske back in 1991, and I was driving the blue. Do you guys might remember when I was driving the Kodiak number 27 car? I know the gentleman back here does, right? In fact, that was really something. I walked in a room a little while ago, and he's got a calendar of me driving the number 27 car when I won the championship. But he also had a ticket, and the ticket was the very first win I ever had. He had a ticket to the Valley Dale 500 in 1986. He's got them on him right now, and I just signed it. Oh, wow. That was my very first victory. What a heck of a deal that was. But yeah, Mr. Penske, him and I decided to start Team Penske after I quit driving the number 27 car. And he's been a great mentor of mine. He sat down one day and he said, son, he said, I know you are paying attention to the car business a little bit. He said, but I'm telling you what, you need to pay a little more attention to it, because one of these days you won't be driving this car, and you better make sure you got something lined up for your life after that. And boy, he was right. And I started, investing more in the stores. We started off with one store, then we went 2 stores and 3 stores. We got the Honda store in Oak Ridge, I remember, then the Toyota in Morristown, then they went on and on and on, and now we got 8 of them, and we still want to grow, that's for sure, but he does. But it's been just fantastic. And this whole area up in Tennessee has just been so kind to me, it's unreal. And I've had so many visits, had so much fun. And talk about fun, I was telling the guys I was here last week, had a good time the last couple of days last week up here, and then here I am today, and I come back next Tuesday and Wednesday, and I'm shooting Moonshiner episodes for Discovery Channel. And they tell me, so where you want to? I said, where are we shooting these at? And he goes, we're going to be in a place called Danridge, Tennessee. I said, what? That's where my Ford store's at. He said, well, no, that's where Moose Shiners is at. I said, okay. So one day we're at Bulls Gap Speedway. It was a volunteer speedway, I think they call it. We're shooting stuff right there. And then the next day up there by the Ford dealership in Danbridge. So that'd be pretty cool, being in the area, doing all kind of stuff. When they called me about that opportunity, I said, well, heck yeah, I'll do it, you know. So it's all, you always want to do what you can to, you know, keep involved in the sport and stuff. And talking about keeping involved, I've been now working with the Motor Racing Network, the voice of NASCAR, doing radio. I did when I quit driving the car at the end of 2005 down at Homestead, Florida. I went to work with ESPN, worked with those guys for 10 years announcing the NASCAR races. And so when their contract ran out, NBC ended up getting the contract, and they already had their guys. And so NASCAR called me and said, we've never had a race analyst ever with the Motor Racing Network, and we'd love for you to be our race analyst. So I've been doing that now for, what, 7 years now?
Yeah.
Something like that. But I've been able to call some really exciting races, some amazing Daytona 500s and some races like that. But where I'm going now, did anybody watch the race this past weekend?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I have never in my life seen the move that this kid Ross Chastain did. He was in the chase, the Final Four. So now everything's been whittled down. We started off 10 races ago, and the top 16 cars made it into what they call the chase. Everybody else was eliminated. So then you whittle that down to the top 12. Then you middle it down to the top 8. So this past weekend at Martinsville, it was the last race. And the top 4 who made it there advance on this weekend to Phoenix, Arizona, which I'll be out there. I'm leaving on Friday morning to announce that race. And that's who's going to find out who the champion is. Well, going into this, kid named Ross Chastain was in. Well, about 5 laps to go, he got past and he was out. And so he came off at turn 2 with the white flag waving, and he hit the radio button, and he says, where are we at? And this crew guy come across the radio and said, you're 2 spots short. I have no idea where, I know now because I've interviewed him, but how this happened in his head this quick. He threw a Hail Mary. You know, you hear about the Hail Mary passes and all that. So you go to a place like Martinsville, Virginia, I mean, you go down the straightaway pretty doggone fast, and then you're completely out of the throttle. You're on the brakes real hard to make that corner. You're on the brakes so much that sometimes the front brakes catch on fire. That's how much brakes you're using. He came down that back straightaway, and he said, I'm going to do something I've never done before. And he went down there, and he never got out of the throttle. He held it wide open. He took his hands off the steering wheel and held onto his seat belts and ducked his head down. And he went at the wall, and he hit the wall wide open about 140 miles an hour, stayed in the throttle, and rim rode the wall all the way around. He was going so fast you couldn't believe it, with his hands off the steering wheel. And when he came off the corner, he found himself going straight, and he put his hands back in the wheel real quick. And the guy that he had to beat to make it in the championship was Denny Hamlin. And Denny Hamlin was right there, and he beat him by 4 foot to the start-finish line. It was the most dramatic thing you've ever seen in your life, that somebody would basically close their eyes and take their hand off the wheel and hold it wide open and have the guardrail hold them inside the track from flying out of the track. Yeah. And it's water cooler talk everywhere. Everybody's talking about it. How could he even think about it? And he interviewed, so my brother and I, when we were 10 years old, we played these video games called NASCAR Cube or something. And in the video game, we used to hit the wall and hold it wide open. It worked on a video game. And he said it just clicked in my mind as I come off turn 2, and I went, da-da-da, here we go. And he said, I come off of turn 2, and the NASCAR cars, the way these cars are designed now, they got what they call independent rear suspensions. I mean, it's not a straight axle like we ran for years and years and years. Now it's a really cool race car with all this independent suspension. And it's got a transmission that's a 5-speed transmission. Well, back in the day, they used to always be 4 speeds. So at Martinsville, they have the gear ratios figured out where you run that car in 4th gear. That's where it's the best deal is. And now they can downshift. They can actually go into corners and downshift to 3rd gear, and as they come off the corner, they can pull it back to 4th gear. Well, he came off of turn 2 so fast that he said, when he made the commitment, he reached up and grabbed it and pulled it into fifth gear. Which I haven't run that all day long. That means he said, I pulled that thing into fifth gear, closed my eyes, and went for it. You know? And when that baby came around there, he said, I was 3/4 of the way around, and I'm just flying. There's stuff shooting everywhere. The body's falling off. The hood's about to blow off of it. And I saw the pit gate. And he said, oh, man, I'm going to hit the pit gate. That's going to stop me solid. And as he come across, he bounced off the leading edge of the pit gate and just kept going straight. And he was going so fast, he was running 30 miles an hour faster than Brad Keselowski, who was in front of him. When he saw Hamlin right here, he just went, he rammed over Brad Keselowski in the back end of that car, and it must have knocked Keselowski's car forward 20 foot. It was unreal. The whole place was going nuts. I've never seen nothing like it. The Martinsville Speedway is 100% sold out. And it was exciting to see how NASCAR seems like it's back now. It went through so many years. I retired, Dale Earnhardt passed away. We had got killed, all this stuff happened, you know, and we lost, and then COVID, all of it. But now there are people who understand the new drivers, understanding Chase Elliott, understand this Ryan Blaney. They understand all the new kids coming in, and Rusty and Dale aren't coming back, you know, so they're finding other people to root for and pull for. But I had a picture on my telephone where I was up in the broadcast booth looking down, and there was 25 lanes of people coming into the racetrack with tickets. And it was just a mob scene of people. So it was interesting to see all those people coming back to NASCAR and being so excited about it.
I got the
And
money for
it made me feel good to watch that. And now what happened this past weekend, you know, whether you like it or not. And boy, by the way, there was a lot of drivers that didn't like it at all. And I think there's some of them that I didn't know they have tried it in the past and it didn't work. They crashed big time. You know? I mean, they went out the wall and that's where they stopped. Somehow this guy made it all the way around the racetrack. And they said, oh, another thing. We got the timing and scoring system, you know. And so all day long, if you're in some people deal in miles per hour, some people deal in lap times, which we deal in lap times. So basically, as the race is going on, the average lap time was like a 21.70. That's about what they were running. This kid, when he did that, he came across the line and ran an 18.25. It was the fastest lap ever recorded in the history of Martinsville Speedway. Oh my Lord! But we're going to talk about that one for a long time. But this week coming up is the last race. It's the championship race going into Phoenix, Arizona. And I think probably after I leave this little speech today and go look at my phone, I think NASCAR is going to announce that they're outlawing that move. Because, you know, because when it got all done, it was real exciting. But then they said, wait a minute, man, that was exciting, that was great. But what happens if that car would have climbed that wall? I said, well, it would have landed in the grandstands and killed probably 300 people. And so then you see all the exciting part of it, then you go, but what if this would happen? Like, oh, wow, we don't want to try that one again, you know. Then it's one of those things you learn, you know, when we lost Dale Earnhardt, learned about the head and neck restraint system, start doing that, started building different seats, started building the soft walls and all the different things. And sometimes it takes something crazy like that to teach you, because your mind didn't go that far to think that you could even do that, you know. And so now they'll learn from that. And he ended up making the championship. Denny Hamlin's not a happy guy today. he's not in, but that's what happens. But you know, I want to thank everybody for welcoming us to the community here in Clinton. You know, when the opportunity came up to get the Chevrolet store, we were so excited about it, and we put a lot of money in, and you know, fixing it up and buying different properties and building a body shop and the stuff we've done. But you guys have been great to us, and we really, really appreciate it a lot. But what I'd like to do now, if we could, I'd like to open up for some questions and answers and ask you guys, answer some questions, see what's on your mind, because this is always the exciting part. I always love doing this, and I learn a lot myself when we do it. Who's got the first question? Yes, sir.
Can you tell us, after yourself, my second favorite driver is Davey Allison. Do you have any Davey Allison memories or stories?
Memories I got of Davey Allison. Bobby Allison, his dad, used to help me a ton when I was a young punk growing up in St. Louis, Missouri, just dying to get in NASCAR. And Bobby had a couple cars that he owned that I actually bought. I went from St. Louis and went down and bought a car, and I rebuilt it, and I was able to run it in the race in Charlotte. And while that was going on, I was still doing a lot of short track racing. Well, I was winning a ton of short tracks. I was living up in Missouri, and I was racing down in Alabama and Wisconsin, all around the country. And Davey got to calling me. Bobby would say, well, if you can't figure this short track car, I'll call Rusty. You know, I know him real good. And so David would call me up, and I would share setups with him and stuff. And we got to be really good friends. And then he got to flying. And I've always been a pilot my whole life. I got like 12,000 hours of flight time right now. I flew Learjets, King Airs, single engine planes, everything. And so Davey started doing that too. So him and I used to share all kind of aviation stories. And I'll never forget, I got home from a race and I'm sitting on my couch at the house and the phone rang when I heard that he crashed his helicopter in Talladega. He bought one of those, wanted to do that, and got the tail rotor in a catch fence, and he ended up dying that day. But it was a terrible deal, but he was a heck of a racer, and he learned a ton from his father. He was one of the kids that was always in the shop, greased from head to toe, working like crazy, teaching himself, and his dad was super good at that too. His dad was a real innovator. And so, I mean, I remember they never used to have power steering in NASCAR. The people just had a regular steering box, and the guys would rough it up and drive them. Well, Davey or Bobby Allison dreamed up. He said, "I can put a power steering box in these cars, and even though they have so much horsepower, it would just take the power steering pumps in the past and blow them all up. You couldn't run them." So Bobby dreamed how to do that. He's the one that invented the power steering in NASCAR. He's the one that invented a car called the front steer car, meaning that the tie rods were in the front of the front axles, and that's the way it steered. And he was a real innovator. He taught a lot to his son. And I always used Bobby as a mentor to me. Bobby helped me a ton, Bobby Allison did. And then he taught that to his kids. So yeah, me and Davey were always talking, you know. And he passed away in 1993, which just happens to be the year that I won more races than I ever won in my life. I won 10 races that year. It was my best year ever in the sport of NASCAR. 10 victories. To think about, you win a third of all the races in NASCAR that year, that was really impressive. But I remember that year because that's what happened to Davey. It was terrible. But yeah, so I did deal with him quite a bit.
How did you get motivated and get started in racing?
My father, my dad, we lived in St. Louis, Missouri. My dad did it as a hobby. There was a little racetrack called Lake Hill Speedway. And Dad, we owned paper routes, and we owned a vacuum cleaner store in Missouri. And so I was a vacuum cleaner repairman. I'd get in there, and I could fix any vacuum cleaner in this room right now. And I can make that baby go, man. I'm telling you what. I know how to soup those electric motors up and all that stuff. I put bigger magnets and brushes and everything in it. But I did that, and my dad.
At the store this week.
But my dad, that was our business. And during the week, there was a little track called Lake Hill Speedway, and we'd build these old cars, and Dad would drive them. And then when Dad started getting burned out on it, we started becoming of age. He said, "You want to try it?" And I was able to. Then my dad started me off in it, and I started me off in a lower division. And my very first race, I won the race, and that.
How old were you then?
I was 15 years old. You had to be 16 to drive. Back there in St. Louis, Missouri. And then, so that first race I won, I got so doggone excited about it. It's called a semi-feature event. Well, literally 30 minutes later, the big race starts. And if you win the semi-feature, you transfer into the big race. Well, I got so excited, and my buddies know that I won that race, I forgot to put gas in the doggone car. Because they only had like 7-gallon gas tanks or something. So I forgot to put gas in the car, and I made it 10 laps in the big race, and I think I'm running in the middle of the pack somewhere. And the doggone thing runs out of gas. So it was funny, but yeah, Dad started it, and yeah, he was my mentor right up to the day he passed away, and we just had a hell of a time with him. He's the one that started me though.
When you were at Daytona, and of course the wreck where you flipped the car and so forth, is that part of what triggered the flaps that now are on the roofs of the cars and that sort of thing? And
Yes.
The second question is, do you remember anything about that wreck?
I do. He's talking about my worst wreck ever. That was in 1993, the same year that I won 10 races. That happened at Talladega, Alabama. Had a great car that day. I led probably the majority of the race, and 5 laps to go, it starts raining. And it starts raining hard. I'm leading. Dale Earnhardt Sr.'s running second right in my bumper. We've been drafting all day long. And so he comes up to me. They're getting the track dried off. And he said, "I'm telling you what's going to happen." I said, "What's that?" He said, "You're out front and I'm second." these guys behind us are going to get a really big run in the draft. You better be prepared with a couple laps to go. They're going to blow right past us. And then we got to hook up and go at it again, you know. Sure enough, man, they dropped that green flag with 5 laps to go, and here they come. Here comes Ernie Irvin and a couple of guys right past me. And I go from first back to like 7th. And then Earnhardt's hooked up with me still in the back because we all just got our doors blowed off. That's the lingo we use, you know. And so here we come marching back to the front. And I get up to, I think it's like third. And I'm coming down the straightaway, and they're waving the checkered flag. And he gets a big run, Earnhardt does. And he darts to the inside, and I see him, and I pull down to block him. And my left rear quarter panel hit his right front tire to turn me sideways, and I went straight up in the air when the air got a hold of it. Because we're running right at 200 miles per hour then, maybe 203, 204, something like that. And the air caught it, lifted it like an airplane, and that car went straight up. And I remember a car pirouetting in the sky like this, and as it comes down, straight down, like a doggone missile. And when it hit, my hands were on the wheel, and it bent my hands back, and I broke my wrist off. I got a 12-inch pin on my wrist right now from that wreck. And I broke my wrist off. When I broke my wrist off, I just blacked out. I remember blacking out right then. And then the next thing I hear is this, I hear thump, 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 thump. And I go, what is that? And I'm just coming out of consciousness. And I was in a doggone Huey helicopter on the way to Birmingham Hospital in Alabama. It knocked me out, and I woke up in the helicopter. And that thump, thump I was hearing was the doggone blades. And yeah, but it was a terrible wreck. It was a horrible wreck. But I came back, flew up to Indianapolis. Dr. Terry Trammell does a lot of IndyCar drivers, put my wrist back together and put a pin in there, put a big brace on me. And very next race I go to is the Sonoma Road Race out in California. And had a good car, had a backup driver too standing by. And I'm gonna try to run the race with a broken wrist, and I was able to do pretty good. And then I came up into turn 1. It's a real high-speed corner there. And you go from like 4th gear down to 3rd gear down to 2nd gear, and as I pulled that thing in 2nd gear, it got sideways on me, and I went to correct, and I turned back, and then when I went to turn back this way, my damn brace got caught in the steering wheel, and the wheel, I couldn't turn the wheel any longer because the brace was locked. My hand could only move just a little bit. I got locked like this, and I ended up wheel hopping, they call it, and it tore the transmission out of the car. So that's how I lost the championship to Earnhardt. I won so many races, and I finished 2nd in the title in '93. He won it. I lost it because I wheel hopped that doggone thing. And everything else the whole time was great because I'm winning all them races. But back then it was who had the most points accumulated through the year won. There was no stage racing and all this stuff we got now. So that was it. I'm really so happy I won the championship in '89. I lost it to Bill Elliott the year before, like by 10 points. And then I won it in '89. Then in '93, I led it all year long and lost it right at the end of Earnhardt. So I'm the type of guy that sits up going, well, I could have had 3. I was that close. But I got 1, and I'm real happy. You know?
Who do you, in your opinion, who was the best driver that you've seen, or that you raced against, or that you see today?
Oh, I'm supposed to, you know. I mean, in the era that I drove, the guy who had the best hand control that could really take a bad car and make it go was Earnhardt. He was really good at what I call carrying a car. That's another term we use. A car could be, you can put an average driver in an average car and it'll run average. You can take a really good driver and put him in an average car and you're like, what happened to this guy? He woke up with different, and all he's driving his brains out. And that was Earnhardt. Earnhardt could carry a car. He could get more speed out of a normal car than most could. But really, and I think Dale would tell you this if he was still alive, one of the best drivers I think I ever seen as far as just brute strength and what he could do with a car was Cale Yarborough. Cale Yarborough could do amazing things with a car. He was, you know, really strong guy. His neck was this big. They always talk about how big his neck was. They put him at Bristol, Tennessee. Everybody's necks are getting tired because of the G-forces. He just manhandled that baby and take it right to victory lane. And, you know, win all these Daytona 500s, all these big races, you know. I remember he comes off a turn 4 at Daytona qualifying for the Daytona 500. And he loses it. It hits the wall. The car end over end off of turn 4, almost out of the racetrack. They bring a backup car out and he goes and wins the Daytona 500. You know, and but the guy was just amazing. You know, guys like him, guys like David Pearson, Pearson was so good, you know. Then you get into, they started getting the next modern era, and that was me, and that was Earnhardt, and that was guys like you know, Ernie Irvin, and guys like Dale Jarrett, Terry Labonte, all that. But I think about that every now and then, a question, and I always shake my head again. That'd be Cale. He did some amazing things behind the wheel. Yes.
Lap the field at Bristol in '73.
Did he?
He
You
ran
remember
the
that, probably, yeah.
Yes.
He was just that good. He was a great driver. So it was, and now that he's in the Hall of Fame and I'm in the Hall of Fame, I get to see him every year at Darlington for what they call the Darlington Throwback Week, and all the Hall of Famers are there, and it's just an amazing meeting of all these different people. You know, all the guys that have won everything, whether it's Darrell Waltrip, whether it's Ned Jarrett, you know, everybody that's in the hall. We all get to meet and talk about all these different ages and all our different years of racing. It's a lot of fun. It really is.
So does time go in slow motion whenever you're up there spinning?
It really does.
Yeah, because I've been in a car wreck before and it's literally like slow motion before the actual crash.
Yeah, you get up in there and people say, "What do you remember?" I said, "I remember my hand floating in the air." And I remember just like, why is my hand floating in the air? Why is my hand floating in the air? Boy, you just been to big wreck. I said, I didn't know that. There's weird things that go on. You know,
Yeah.
it shocks you so bad, your body, when you just like break a bone off and you're like, you know, then, yeah, I think it's, and then when you look back at the accident, I go, holy smokes, that thing was 30 foot in the sky. It was coming down like this at 204 miles an hour, barrel rolling 26 times. Wow. It's nuts. So don't try that again. Let's take a couple more. Anybody over here? Anybody back there?
What got you into building motorcycles?
Oh, great question. That's my newfound love now. Motorcycles. Mike Helton, the president of NASCAR, actually our chairman of NASCAR, 20 years ago, took a handful of us out to Sturgis, South Dakota to the motorcycle rally. He loved the motorcycle rallies, and so he took me, he took Tony Stewart, he took Richard Childress, car owner Richard Childress, and a handful of us out there. And I really had a great time. We rode the Black Hills all through Mount Rushmore and all that, and we just had a wonderful time. So I won again, and then I won again. Mike kept inviting us to come out there, and I got really hooked on it. I started building cool motorcycles for myself to ride when it was Sturgis time and stuff like that. Well, then Mike started not going near as much as he was. Then he pretty well stopped, and he said, "Hey, now you're in charge." I said, "I'm in charge." Because Mike always led all the rides. He said, "You're in charge." He said, "I can't go this week or this year or whatever." So I started taking control of this thing. Then all of a sudden, I got all these buddies that want to go. I got Mark Martin wanting to go. I took Mark with me last year. I had my drag racing buddy, Don Perdome. He wanted to go. Then my off-road buddy, a guy named Walker Evans. Walker's won 10 off-road world championships and all this stuff. We've got Walker. Got all these people going now. And so I was into the Xfinity series, the Busch series with my son, Steven. And that was going okay, but it was taking just so much effort and a lot of money. Then we lost our sponsor. And I said, let's just quit doing this stuff. So I sold the team off, and then he went back doing some short track racing. And then we started building a couple bikes, and we had an opportunity to get involved with a bike builder. I got involved with him. That didn't work good. So I said, you know what? We can do this. And so we started a motorcycle company. And these bikes are pieces of work. I mean, they're artwork almost. They're $80,000 to $100,000 motorcycles. They're absolutely beautiful. The company now is called Southern Country Customs. And he's all over the internet, Instagram, and all that stuff. But we've been building these bikes. And to date, we've built 57 of those things. You know, so it's been very, very successful. It's been a lot of fun. And one of the main reasons it's been fun because I've been able to meet a lot of different people. So I go to the Sturgis Rally where there's 750,000 people. We go to Daytona Beach Bike Rally where there's 500,000 people. I just got back from Rogers, Arkansas, right there to world headquarters for Walmart. We had 300,000 people there. Went down to Bike Week and came back. Now we're going to Barrett-Jackson, and we're taking our rig, and Steven is building some super, super high-quality, beautiful motorcycles. And it's fun doing that. And the nice thing about it is the entire NASCAR community is watching that. And we get all these phone calls from crew guys and people watching our work, and they really like it. But it's kind of my newfound love, and I'm really having a great time with it. There's some things I do that don't make a whole bunch of financial sense, but it's a whole hell of a lot of fun. So that's it, yeah. So right now we're doing the bikes and really enjoying it. So yeah, thank you for the question. All right, well that's
Any
it, guys.
final questions before I get?
You got
okay.
one,
So
yeah.
how do you really feel about Jeff Gordon?
You know, Jeff and I used to never get along. And when he retired and when I retired, we got invited to go out to a place in Glamis, California, and race on the sand dunes together. And that was one of the biggest bonding things I ever seen. He respected my driving, I respected his driving. We weren't in any competition any longer, and we could just talk and talk. And he's turned into a really good friend. In fact, he was up at Martinsville this weekend, and I'm just getting ready to broadcast a race. I look over my shoulder, and there he is over there, and he comes in and pats me on the back and says, "Have a great race." And I'm like, "You're working for Fox? What are you doing up here?" I said, "This is NBC race." He said, "Oh, NASCAR's got me doing some stuff for that upcoming Chicago street race, doing some promotion." So yeah, he's been, him and I get along real good now. I didn't get along with him at all. Man. He said, "Why you used to hate me so damn bad?" I said, "I never hated you, I just didn't like you." He said, "Why is that?" I said, "Because you always took my damn money, man.
That's a good reason.
You beat me all the time."